If you have said to yourself, I should write that, or if someone has said to you, you should write that, then I'm talking to you because you need to write. And that's why you're tuned in to Why Write. Hi, welcome to Why Write for another episode to learn why you should be writing your story and why writers are writing their stories. I'm your host, Angela Grout, and I'm here today with two special guests, and we are going to talk about memoir writing. And you know, we all have that memoir inside of us, whether it's a memoir from one specific day or our entire life. And we all want to document our lives in order to share either with ourselves, with our families, or with others, because there's lessons in there for everyone. So today I want to welcome onto my show Sister Jane Morrisey and Pam Robbins. Now, Jane Morrisey has been born in Westfield, and she has been loyal to her roots here in Western Massachusetts throughout her whole life. She's an ambassador of peace, and I'm so glad to have a peaceful ambassador on the show because that is what I try to do as a writer, is to spread peace. She has devoted her life to service as a Sister of St. Joseph for over 60 years now. She's been a teacher and a confidant, an activist, she's a playwright, and she's an author. She has written a book called Finding Jane in the Box, and we are going to talk to her today about her memoir, along with her friend and editor, Pam Robbins. We have Pam Robbins, who is going to tell us not only about how the two of them have connected, but how she was able to take a bunch of writing that someone has done and construct it into a binded book for everybody to read. Hi. Thank you so much, both
Angela.
of you, for coming in.
Hi, we're glad to be here.
Oh, I'm so glad to have you in here. And, you know, Jane, you wrote this book, Finding Jane in the Box, and it's you, Jane, in the box. And, you know, as a writer, and I've taken many memoir writing classes, I know, like, there's different ways, you know, to start a prompt with writings. And what you did is you've accumulated things over the years in this box, like we all do. You know, you put your trophies from high school in there. You put your, you know, the best essay you wrote in school. You want to keep that, some pictures, postcards, and you were able to pull them out and write a memoir from it. What prompted, how did you decide to do this?
Well, it all started, I think, probably when I was a child, and my mother taught me how to write before I went to school.
Wow.
And I used to write poems, and she kept them, you know, so she kept them in her box, which became her file cabinet when she had not 2 but 7 children, and she was keeping everything for everyone, so you needed
You're one of 8 children. You like big families.
I like big families. I'm one of 7, but you know, but thanks for giving me the 8th. It could be Pam, it could be you, you know,
Yeah.
whomever I meet.
Well, and then the whole family of the Sisters of St. Joseph.
That's right. And then little did I think then that I would end up keeping notebooks from school, or you know, or that my mother was shoveling them away somewhere, or I'd send a postcard and she would keep it. And so when my mom died, she was 83, the age that I will soon be. And
Well, congratulations.
I feel gifted by God.
You are
every
gifted
day
by
of
God.
it, you know.
And every day of these 83 years, you have had spectacular things happen in your life, and you've been part of, which you've shared with us in this book.
Yes, and you know, and some of them I've kept secret, I'm sure. But
So there's a question I have, is how do you decide what to include in a book and what not to include?
well, I tell you, it helps to have a friend who hasn't been around for 50 years of my life, but in the back of my mind, I knew I had to meet her one day, because I used to love to read what she wrote, which was in the local papers.
All right, I'm going to backtrack a little because we're talking about Pam, and I mean it's fascinating. So, like you said, you've been writing your whole life, and whether you've saved them or your mother saved them, I mean, obviously your mother knows that you were meant to write this memoir. I think one day, there's actually a story in here about you being very ill in your 30s.
Yep.
And you're, you know, the doctors had said you probably wouldn't live, and your mother said, you know, she's going to live. God has too much for her to do. And here you are 50 years later having your memoir come out. Now, in another story, I'm not going to give away the whole book, but I know some of this from here. But now, in 1970, you were told by someone that you should meet Pam.
Oh, it was maybe in the 60s, because I was a young nun. I don't even think I'd left, the mother house at Mount Marie, and she used to invite me on occasion to talk to one of her classes at the Elms.
And this is Sister
James Mary.
James Mary.
And she'd say, I have someone I want you to meet one day. And oh my.
And you knew of Pam because, like you said, she was writing articles in the newspapers.
That's right. And so when my youngest sister, Mary Chris, found a letter in the box in which Pam Robbins said she wanted to meet me, I felt like I've got to find out if she's still alive, where in the world she might be, and I've got to do this.
And we're talking, this is 50 years later.
50 years.
So 50 years earlier, you're told you need to meet her.
Yes.
And
yes, and Sister James Mary had died when I was a very, very younger sister. And so there I was, and I called up a friend of hers, Sister Jean O'Shea, who's now 95 years old. And I said, Jean, because she'd been a friend of Sister James Mary's when she was a child, is she still alive? Where is she? And she said, she's actually quite near where you just moved.
Yeah, I was about a mile down the street.
And the timing is everything.
Yeah.
I mean, it really is.
It really is.
I mean, I will say, I was told a couple years back that you should meet Sister Jane Morrisey.
Yeah.
And, I started writing some plays and knew that, you became a playwright. You wrote this play and the Elms put it on. And it's like, okay, yeah, I'd like to, meet her. And the timing went, and then my aunt gives me your book, and she's like, you should read this book. You should meet her. I'm like, okay, I don't know how to reach out to you. I reached out to Annette McDermott, and I was like, how do I get in touch with her? And here we are. The timing.
Well, what she won't tell you, besides her writing, she has a lot to write about because her work has always been with the poor and disenfranchised, and she was one of the founders of the Gray House in Springfield, which serves thousands of people every year, and she also was instrumental in founding Homework House in Holyoke, which helps marginalized kids get one-on-one tutoring. And so all of her work has been in every place she's ever gone, it's been with that in mind. And so she would write about those things, and that all went in the box. So when I saw these thousands and thousands of pages, it was overpowering for her. And she said, I wouldn't even know where to begin. And I thought, well, I can try.
And this is, I have thousands and thousands of papers too, and I look at them going, how do I put all this together? And I tend to, we'll take, pull out one journal and say, okay, I'm going to write a story about just this, because it seems a little bit more manageable. But when you're trying to share a whole kind of history of someone's life and, along with the legacy of what she's done, particularly, helping with a life of service. I mean, you have had a life of service, helping so many, women and children and people in general, whether a lot in the local community, but worldwide too. And, being able to document those things in a journal or sitting down and saying, okay, I have this that I got from, when I went to Delhi, and I'm going to, write about this story. How to put that into a book is a monumental task.
Yes.
So when you're taking all these papers, how do you assemble it? It does seem chronological a little bit.
Well, yes, and I felt like it had to be because it covers so many years. And, the device of going back and forth in time is really interesting, and I like it in some things, but she's such a simple, straightforward thinker and person. I said, let's just start with your childhood. Jane was really shaped by her parents, who married late in life and then had their kids very quickly, and all of hers, it's a remarkable family because they all really love each other. I mean, the siblings are really close. And so she's been supported by them through everything she's done. So I felt we had to start with her childhood. Some people you can skip into,
and it was very important because you can feel the love that you have from your childhood and the respect and even, the calling that you have to, become a nun and going to your father and saying, I want to become a nun, and him saying, are you an adult yet?
Yeah.
Like, I go, Daddy, are you kidding? I'm not 16 years old, And he said, when you know you're a woman, just tell me. And he was really
he was very wise.
died by the time I was a woman.
He was,
And
he died very young.
I was a senior in college when he died, and I was young for my age going to school because I wasn't yet even the legal age for drinking at that time. And
sister, you're not drinking, are you?
Yeah, and but here I was, and I have to say too that I did have another filter in my life for my writing by this time, because you need one. You need to know what's good and what moves somebody. And I in the kindness of a group of women who met to do and review writing, I'd been submitting fragments I wrote in my journals, or things that I was finding in the box, and they would say, you should put this together. But I'm not one who knows how to put things together. I need a whole group with me. I need a community. I need the Sisters of St. Joseph. I need the ones who were with me.
We need to have cheerleaders.
Yes,
we do.
Absolutely.
I mean, cheerleaders are very important, and the encouragement and the support of knowing what is good writing, what is worth sharing, and what
and
needs
who will
to
be honest with you and say, this isn't really quite. It doesn't quite do it. Maybe you need to do something else.
So she became the one who said, though, Jane, you've reached the point. Give me what you have that you have not written down yet or incorporated into something that reads
you haven't
like
published or
anything.
Yeah, I mean, and there's a lot of memoirs in there, and I write with the Springfield Creative Writers, the Springfield Museum, and we'll come in, and a lot of people will write a memoir piece, and then the next week you show up and you're writing another memoir piece, and then the next week you write another memoir piece, and they're not connected. They're individual pieces. A lot of times when I've done it, because I've worked on novels, I will try to continue it or follow my outline if I know what needs to be written in a certain chapter. Say, okay, I have to write this today. This needs to be done. I've had a few chapters where I put off for months going, I don't want to write it. I don't want to write it. And then, you finally sit down and do it. But, taking these individual, little snippets and then weaving them into a story that is cohesive is really your talent.
Yeah, well, and I'm lucky. I mean, I have that background in newspapers of condensing, and you have to, and the hardest thing is letting go, isn't it, right? I mean, and even stopping. When you get to the point where you need to stop, you want to go on, and you have to say, no, I've got time to pull the plug on this,
Yeah.
The thing is, she was so wonderful to work with, because some people are so married to every word, and you try to, we have to arm wrestle them to get them to change it. She was very open to anything that was suggested to her by me or anyone else who read it. And
that's interesting, because with memoir pieces, sometimes that's harder to get someone to change their words.
Amazing.
Whereas when you're writing a fictional story, you're not so married to those words, but you're not going to be able to say to her, don't describe your childhood home. No, this is the childhood home. It's important.
Yeah, I have a kind of a snide habit of saying, there's probably nobody cares. That's what I'll say. And she'll go, okay, but she's very collegial by nature, and being in a religious community, you kind of have to be collegial. And so she works just beautifully. I mean, it was so easy. The hard part was I don't have a computer anymore, because I don't like them much. I'm kind of old.
So I
edited her whole book with cut and paste. She typed that, but I loved it. But then I read something that said you shouldn't work on editing a book more than 5 hours a day because it's too intense. And I was working 12 hours a day because we were trying to meet this crazy, impossible deadline. What did you want to do?
Self-induced deadline.
We wanted to be part. Oh, we wanted to launch the book before school got out at the Elms because we wanted to do it at the Elms.
Yes.
And so we had an April deadline, and I thought, why? Okay, but it was worth it because it was wonderful. And Dr. Henry Dumais, who's the president, could not have been more supportive. He let us use the auditorium. It was
That's
a big.
so great.
We sold every book we had.
Wow.
We had to give another.
That's great.
It was
yeah,
a great
and
moment.
my aunt Carol was at that. So
There you go.
she tried to get me to go that night, and I had prior plans, and I really wanted to go. So
And you have other friends who support Jane.
Yes. My friends, Kate Gordon. I mean, we were best friends all through high school, and both started businesses. Well, ran businesses here in town. She took over her parents' business, and I took over the Agua and Flower Shop. So, Kate and I go way back.
So it was fun. I mean, it was intense, and you know how writing is. It's intense, it's exhausting, it makes you cry. but if you just have to
makes you want to tear up some pages or burn them or start over.
So fulfilling. And,
I read a book, about Swedish death cleaning. I don't know if you've ever heard this.
Yes, I've heard of that. Yes.
So reading her book, it reminded me a little bit about this because what Swedish death cleaning is when you're trying to downsize.
Yes.
And you have all these lovely trinkets and belongings and pictures and stories that you want to keep, but you don't have the space for it. Mm-hmm. You actually will take the item and you thank it for being part of your life. And what they suggest is take a picture of it and then write a story about it, so that you keep that memory.
Okay.
And each one of these chapters is part of sharing these parts of her traveling life, her service life, her protesting life.
I know it.
And it's like you really get such a taste of everything. And it shows what a well-rounded person you are, but also what a real person you are. Because I think not that I think this because I'm friends with a lot of nuns, but a lot of people don't see them as people.
Right.
That doesn't mean to sound insulting, but it's like they are living this prayerful life where do they have other things going on, and boy, do you have other things going on.
Yeah, she's been busy.
You've been very busy.
I
mean, traveling and fighting for the rights, and God's put you in the right place at the right time, always, and trusting that is a calling, besides the calling to become a nun, besides the calling to write a book. I mean, the calling is real. Yeah,
it is.
I mean, even for you to become an editor and a writer for the paper, you follow through with that calling.
Yeah, this was. I really enjoyed doing this very much, and I consider it like one of the best things I've done because it's a story that people can really take into their heart, and I think if you. Somebody said about somebody recently, to know so-and-so is to become a better person, and I think that's how it is with knowing Jane. And really, when you read this book, you know Jane. You really do.
You definitely know Jane. Yeah. And Jane is not in the box anymore.
No, she's not
Jane
in the box.
Jane is out of the box.
We can't get her back in the box, Angela.
Do you still have the box?
Yeah.
No. It's long been recycled, returned to the earth from which it came.
Thanks to Annette McDermott, your friend.
Yes.
Well, and I mean, I dog ear a lot of pages. I tend to write in books when I have conversations with the author in here. But, as a writer, I really resonated with how, you get all of these writings and notebooks and, we keep all of these things because they're us. They're our own Bible. I mean, this is the Bible of our life. And letting that go can be very hard. And as you were opening up, some of the pages and you'll say, that notebook, the box that held a surprised me with one Advent entry, which evidently excited my newfound contemplation, lived on a page, and then it crawled into a simple prayer in the margin. And when you're writing this, you're talking about how you're rediscovering what you've written. Like you're opening your book, your own book, and you're seeing your own writing, but then in the corner you've written a prayer. Yeah. And I see this so much in my own writing, and I go back and I look and I'm like, okay, did I write that for me to discover, or is it something to be shared with others? Yeah. And I think that's where you come into play to say, this is something you can share with others because it's important.
Yes. And in my writing group, one of the people was one of my former students. Who was already a published author. who writes books for children. So she would be so wonderful in what she could say to me, because I not only taught her, I had known her 2 siblings and actually taught one of them too, and they all became writers.
And you were a teacher at the Elms.
I was a teacher at the Elms and at Cathedral.
And at Cathedral, where we all went at different years.
You know.
Yeah, and the whole homework.
Yes, and who knows, who knows wherever else I may have been.
Yeah, and you have a doctorate in literature, in
medieval literature.
Which always comes in handy.
Yeah,
right.
When you can quote Dante.
Right, and reread him.
Yeah.
Because there's something else to be learned there too.
Yeah, and I mean, and when we were talking on the phone one day, we were talking about how there's so much history of medieval literature, but to be able to bring that to modern day. Mm-hmm. Needs to be done. I mean, because even though that's important, it's meaningful for now.
Yeah,
yes.
Yeah, it really is. And so all of that.
And it's really fascinating. Like, Anglo-Saxon was one of my areas of specialization, and I was with one of my godchildren the other day. Someone who became a Catholic as an adult, and Mikey said to me, he was with one of his friends, and he said, "Sister Jane, this guy who works construction, he loves the Middle Ages. Would you say the Our Father for him in Anglo-Saxon?"
See, now you never expect that to come up, but it did.
From these 2 guys in the car, and I go, "Really?"
Okay.
Yes, and I'm okay. Yeah, I'll do that. But and students who will say, really, one of my best friends, she said, "You were teaching contemplative literature," and she said, I just knew I wanted you to be my friend, because when you said that Our Father in Anglo-Saxon, Vater ora thus ert in heaven, you just go, "Thank you."
Yeah. And I mean, this is just one example of how you have reached out to other people, and given them, hope, and given them, promise of, being a service.
Yes. And that there was somebody who taught me how to do that too. Yeah. How to make those links, how to go out of my way while following the way of the gospel.
Yeah. Well, living the gospel is, what we're here to do.
Yeah. And I mean, in the early church, long before the Middle Ages, that's what they called Christianity, the way.
Yeah.
It was a while before the name of Christ became part of what we were said to be. Mm-hmm. And it was like this epoch in our country, a time when empire was raising its ugly head, and a kind of capitalism, a kind of violence,
which just goes on and on and on.
And it goes on in history until once we will really give ourselves totally to peacemaking. Blessed are the peacemakers.
Yeah.
For they shall be called the children of God.
Yeah, I mean, and there's so much comfort in being a peacemaker, because, it gives you the ability to respect other people. And even respecting differences, I mean, if we all wore the same thing and ate the same thing and prayed the same way, the world would really be a boring place. And in your book, you even talk about how you've gone to, different, temples and practice the religion, or, understood the worship that other religions have, because it's all a universal.
It is.
It's all universal. And I've taught a confirmation for years and years and years, and I will always say to the kids, I can teach you how I gained my faith and my spirituality, and it is through Catholicism. And I can show you how to make meatballs, but I can't show you how to make Thai food, because that's just not in my genre. Right. But if you want to eat Thai food, or you want to, practice in the Jewish faith, go learn it. I mean, if that's what you're called to do, go do it. I mean, I can support you, but I can't teach you that, because that's not how I learned. But I respect it. And, God's not going to speak to us all in the same way.
That's it. There you
go. I mean,
yeah.
It would, like I said, it would be a very boring, I don't know, Stepford Wives type
And
world.
who would get left out? Because how many languages are there in our world? And how many languages have there been? And how many customs expressed in those languages and those foods and their culture?
And then we have the universal language of love and kindness and,
kindness.
consideration
Yes,
and
yes.
empathy and compassion. And it's like, if we can live that, that's really showing what we have in our box.
Yes,
Yes.
exactly.
Yeah.
You didn't mention your 82 nieces and nephews.
When you talked about your godson, I almost said, like, for a woman who has never had children, you have 80
Is it
nieces,
82?
nephews,
83
grandnieces,
now.
grandnephews,
Because we've gone into
godchildren.
the third generation beyond my generation.
80, that's-
you know? And to know them by name, and I try. I mean, people who count sheep, before they go to sleep. I try to count my nieces.
Well,
and nephews.
it's probably because you were a teacher that you can do that. Because as a teacher, you have so many students to learn their
That's
names
right.
too. But
That's
80
right.
students and 80 bloodline relatives is
Right.
completely different.
And these days, like sometime I'll see a name in my phone. Who is that person? Well, you've got a phone number, so you can call and ask.
Well, I'm glad you knew who Angela was.
I don't mean to be humbled and say, I think I've forgotten who you are, but do I have the right first name? I have your number, though.
So I do want to ask a quick question about, like, you started playwriting.
Oh.
And I want to just hear, hopefully a quick story about how you wrote this play, how it got discovered, and then you decided to make a go of it and have it produced.
Okay. It was originally like a staged reading, which I did as a lecture 25 years ago.
Okay.
Yeah, so just myself. And I was invited to give a Mary Dooley lecture at the Elms College. And I said, yes, I would do it. And I was president of our community at the time. And I really had been trying to learn our early history and to know the history of the communities that had merged, and one was merging with us as sisters of
Saint Joseph.
So,
And what year is this?
This was in the...
25 years ago?
It was the beginning of this century,
Okay.
beginning of this millennium.
Okay.
So it was a real turning of the page.
Yes, you're
in
capturing
yes.
history.
So I was going up to see the house of Anne of Green Gables with my older sister Joyce, who just went to heaven on us, and her daughter, who was a student at the Elms at the time, a biology major, and Maura said to me, Auntie Jane, what are you going to talk about for that Mary Dooley lecture? And I said, oh, I don't know. I was thinking about the spirituality of Emily Dickinson. And she said, why would you do that? And I said, well, because I really do love her spirituality. And she said, but why wouldn't you talk about what you love the most? And I said, and what would that be, Maura? And she said, I think it would be the Sisters of St. Joseph. You gave your life. And she said, there I was, like, and she was right.
So she did it?
So, yeah, I did it. And I chose, I started reading more about our history, and I chose a sister from each of the centuries in which we'd lived. We were founded in 1650, around 1650. And I chose a woman, and I let her tell her story. So I hadn't written an introduction, I'd written a conclusion, but in between there were 5 women telling their stories. And now we were in a new century. Well, anyway, I found the play, and I said, the stage reading, and I said, Pam, what do I do with this?
I said, let's add the current person and try see if we can do it at the Elms with students involved. And we did, and it was fabulous. And by the way, it's on YouTube.
Yeah, okay. We're going to put the link in.
Yep, and if they have trouble with the link, they can just do SSJ Play Dear Neighbor, and it will come up. And it was great. There was a faculty member involved. Jane played Sister Mary Dooley, who's now gone, of course, and it was fun. It was great fun. We had a man who wanted to be in it. He said, I can't be a nun. Can I be the narrator? I said, yes, you can.
Perfect. But, it's such a great way to teach history through a play, through an interactive, entertaining show. And, and I always I always strive to, create something that's entertaining, but can be educational, at the same time.
Yep.
One of the plays that, I'm working on is about the call of being a writer and how, the struggle can be real because, whether it's the muse or the subject or whatever, that just is, knocking on your head and keeping you up and making you write page after page of stuff sometimes you might not even feel comfortable writing or researching.
Yes.
Like you were very comfortable to look up Emily Dickinson's, you're like, I can write about Emily Dickinson and her spirituality. And then when someone turns the page onto you to say, well, what's most important to you, it becomes, a little bit different to write.
Yes. And interestingly enough, we're celebrating our 375th anniversary starting this fall.
That's amazing.
Yeah. So, again, to put Patty McDonald on stage in Olivia.
Patty McDonald was the vice president.
Yeah, and it was just like, how great.
Well, and for the Elms College, especially to be able to put on a play like this, it's just important, especially in the Springfield area, because the Sisters of St. Joseph are, they're our community, we have the Dominican nuns, but the Sisters of St. Joseph are really the ones who have educated us and we have learned from. And I went to Ursuline Academy and then I went to Cathedral. So, I've been surrounded by, nuns my whole life. Riding from Madison Avenue to Plumtree Road every morning with 3 sisters and me in the back seat doing our prayer to St. Christopher that we get to school safely in the 3.5 miles. So, well, I am thrilled that you've been on the show. Can you tell the audience where, we're going to put the links in, but where can they buy this book to read Jane in the Box?
They can contact me, all right?
Or they can go on lulu.com.
They can go on lulu.com. I have maybe a carton and a carton
Still
and a little bit more of books that are at.
So if they contact you directly, they can get it signed.
Yep, they can get it signed.
That's also the way.
Yes, and if they get it through lulu.com,
bring it by.
Yeah.
No, that'd be great. And I assume, Pam, you were the one to help her get to lulu.com.
Yes, and our mutual friend, Annie Emanuele, who did marketing for a long time, she did the actual publishing piece of it. Otherwise, we would just have pages we'd be sending out to you in the mail. We really have no idea.
Chapter at a time.
Yeah, exactly right.
Well, you never know. That could work for future stuff.
Yes.
Oh, well, thank you both for taking the time.
Friendship.
Yes. The power of friendship is huge. And the friendship in the making over 50 years.
Yep. Here we go.
You had to have 50 years of living before you were ready to meet her.
I told her, no more projects. We're done. We're just going to sit on the porch and watch people.
Okay. Well.
But I won't separate.
But thank you for this.
Yes.
This has
thank
been
you.
wonderful.
This has been wonderful.
Thank you.
Well, and I want to thank you, the listening audience, for tuning in to Why Write every week to, find out some interesting things about, people's writing and how they've actually accumulated their writing to publish it in a book and how they've learned to share. So today, I'm going to give you a writing prompt like usual. So when the show is over, I want you to set your timer for 5 minutes and pick up your pen and start writing because, you have a story inside you that needs to be told. And I want you to first make a list of the first quick 3 things you can think of that were momentous times in your life. Maybe it was just, being a child with your mother and you might have been sick in bed and she brought you soup. It could be something, your first boyfriend. It could be, something that you've learned in school. And then I want you to take the first one and start writing and just write out that memory so that you have it documented on a paper. And it may be for you. It may be for you to share with your family member, and who knows, maybe you're going to start to accomplish publishing your own book that can help other people with their lessons in life. So thank you so much for tuning into Why Write, and we'll see you next time. Bye.